Eternals is finally hitting theaters this weekend, and it's time to dive in and rank the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe from worst to best in a tier list style ranking all over again. We're going to include the Disney Plus stuff, we're going to include the movies. Most notably adding to this list this time around is What If and the Eternals. I'm very excited to do this, and of course the most exciting aspect of this for me is seeing how different all of our rankings will be. So make sure to leave a comment, let's see your ranking down below, and as well as make sure to hit that like and subscribe button so we can keep talking movies over here on a daily basis. Without further ado, it's time to get started with this tier list ranking right now. With this tier list ranking, it's time to dive into Avengers Age of Ultron, which I'm going to slide into the B category. I find this film to get a little bit too much hate, that too many people really much crap on this movie nowadays. Yes, Ultron definitely needed a little bit more development. From what we got from him though, I loved Ultron, as well as the rest of the Avengers. I find this film, while it does have some issues where it does have a lot of plotting into it all, it does really well with planting its seeds for Civil War when it comes down to Captain America and Iron Man and their differences. I find that to be very brave and intelligent. I love the Hulkbuster versus Hulk fight in here. I love the introduction to Quicksilver, who sadly didn't live that long, and as well as to Scarlet Witch, and I just found this film to be a great middling chapter for the Avengers. It's not as iconic and classic as the original Avengers film by any means, but when it comes down to the both, I would actually rather rewatch Age of Ultron due to the fact that I found the pacing to actually be a little bit more faster and streamlined than the first Avengers. The first Avengers is still establishing some core elements where this one kind of knew exactly what they were. They were already a team, and I like because we get more of that conjunction with one another. And in fact, if we're going to any of the big Avengers things, I actually wish we got one more Avengers film before they had actually split up, because then we would have really gotten that dynamic all over again. Thankfully, we got a majority of that in Endgame, but I just wanted one more because I'm a little bit selfish. Now going into the next one, let's move in and talk about Ant-Man, which I'm going to put Ant-Man in the B category as well. I find this to be one of the most fun and origin stories that they have ever told in the MCU yet. Now for me, when I do look at this film, sometimes it's not the main one that I want to go back and revisit all the time, but it is still one that I find myself heavily engaged with every single moment I do revisit it. I smile, I laugh, and in general, I just have a big warm fuzzy feeling in my heart. It's a lot of fun as it comes about to be one of the coolest and most unique original origin films in the MCU, and Paul Rudd's Ant-Man is still one of the best castings that the MCU has done yet. I adore this movie to pieces, and I'm sure if you like Ant-Man, you're probably feeling the exact same way that I do. Plus, it's a heist movie, and if you haven't followed me before, I love heist movies, so that's why it gets this added bonus. For the next one, let's have a little bit of fun, and let's go with Captain America the First Avenger, which I'm going to put this in the A category. A movie that has definitely grown on me over time, and continued to grow on me as time has gone on. Now, Captain America the First Avenger, while a lot of fun in its instances, the one thing that holds it back from that S tier is the way that it montages through a lot of the different war elements, and I think maybe adding 10 to 15 minutes onto this movie would have actually helped flesh that out. I'm not a big fan of when they montage through things. I think you really much should streamline the entire story. But even with that said, this is a great introduction to Captain America, Peggy Carter, and of course Sebastian Stan's Bucky, but adding in one of the coolest villains in the MCU that I want more of, and that is Red Skull. Hugo Weaving might have done an amazing job in here, and I know he'll probably never come back to the role, but for what we got of him, I loved Red Skull in here, and I want more. But Ross Marquand, who has been doing the impressions of him in Infinity War and Endgame, and of course even What If, he's done a pretty good job. Jumping into the next one, let's go Doctor Strange, which I find Doctor Strange being the A category. I find this to be a trippy, young, cool, cinematic exploration, and actually the first time I got a 4K TV, this was the first movie I had to test out on it. Don't ask me why. I just had to because of the all vibrant colors and the uniqueness of this movie. I've actually fallen more in love with Doctor Strange as the years have gone by, and I find this movie to be very underrated when people talk about the MCU in general. I do think Mads Mikkelsen's character is probably the one big weakest element of the film, because I love Mads Mikkelsen, he does a great job with the material, but we definitely definitely needed more of him in this movie, and I feel like if they would have given him a little bit more depth, it would have really dove into a harder and stronger stance. With that said, though, this is a great origin story for Doctor Strange, the Ancient One, Wong, and I love Rachel McAdams' relationship with Doctor Strange, and especially how that ties into What If. Now, for me, I overall adore Doctor Strange for what it is, but I understand it's not for everyone. Moving into the next, let's start with one of the Disney Plus series, and that's Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which I'm going to put in the C category. I find the themes, the thematics, the memorabilia of this entire show, in general, the transition of giving Sam Wilson the shield is very important, and honestly, one of the most important parts of the entire MCU yet. Sadly, though, the show itself is very... It's the one show I don't care to rewatch out of the MCU. And again, it's not bad by any means. It's just not great where it really should have been. It had vibes of Winter Soldier in there, and when it was going about it, it worked. And I like the political aspect that they really much tried to touch in here. The suit for the new Captain America looks amazing. Sam looks great in there, and I hope to God it is true on the rumors that he does actually get his own film, because I actually think this show would have worked better as a movie. But some of the tie-ins to the entire world with the Wakandan warriors, which I loved seeing the Dora Milaje show up in there, it just didn't completely... Everything just felt like it was jumbled, and they felt like they were trying to throw too much into one show where it needed more to really breathe. And also, the villain for here, while I like the symbolic meaning of her, I didn't love her. And I found nothing against her performance. She just needed more. U.S. agent, or whatever the hell he's called, he was great, and I thought he was actually one of the best parts about the entire show. But again, this is one that I'm just a little bit mixed on. I love the main characters, love what the show needs to do, but when I look at the overall structure of the entire show, I actually look at this one and be like, honestly, like, you don't need to watch this before you see him the next time. I mean, I'm saying that right now, but if you go from Endgame to this, you understand that he's already getting the shield. And this is the one show I feel like that doesn't yet have a high influence in the MCU. And I wish it did, because it should have a more powerful meaning. Diving into the next one, let's go Shang-Chi, one of the newer Marvel films this year, and I find this film to be a complete A. I love Shang-Chi. I think Shang-Chi is one of the best MCU films, and arguably probably the best singular introduction to a character since the original Iron Man movie. This is just a badass time. The action is probably some of the best hand-to-hand combat scenes we've ever gotten in the MCU. I love how majority of the movie does feel different than what it is, and more of a family drama than just a typical MCU film. And given by the third act, it goes total fantasy, which I dug, and it's not for everyone, but I loved it. And I know, again, it's not going to work for everyone, and everyone's going to have their different opinions, but I sat there and I was just like, oh my god, this is amazing. I love what they're doing with Shang-Chi. I wanted more from this entire sequence, and I can't wait to get more of Shang-Chi. The world, the mythology, the building, the characters. There was not one weak link in here. And Wenwu, woohoo! I know a lot of people say he's one of the best villains. He's just a great antagonist, and in general, his morality and where it comes about, that element of grief and loss is so important. I love Shang-Chi. It was almost to that S ranking, and it's not there yet because I need to see it again. That's the only reason it's not up in the S. It's not up in the S. But moving on to the next one, let's go to Thor: The Dark World, which is easily a D. This is one of the most forgettable MCU movies yet. I have never cared to rewatch this one. I've maybe only seen it 3 or 4 times, and from there, it's just every viewing has really much died down more on me. I like the Thor and Loki stuff in here. In fact, arguably, this is probably one of the most important Thor films for the entire MCU. It adds in one of the Infinity Stones. It brings in that relationship a little bit more, in that dynamic between Thor and Loki and how important that is to them all. But as a whole, the villain, boring. Natalie Portman and Thor's relationship really not going anywhere. And when I look at this entire movie, I just go, meh, not great. Moving on next, we have Thor, the first one, which, let's get this out of the way, it's a C as well. I'm not huge on all the Thor movies, and this one in particular, it's kind of the same route. I love the introduction to Thor. I love how he has to actually live as a human, but understand how his powers work and build to that point once again. And Anthony Hopkins runs in here in such strides. I loved him in this, and that father-brother relationship that we get between Thor, Loki, and Odin is so important as an introductory to this. Kenneth Branagh really does a great job directing this movie. I just wish Thor took more place on Asgard than inside Earth, because on Earth, I understand why you needed him there, but I just really much feel that the movie slows down quite a bit, and again, it comes down to rewatchability for me, and that's why I find the first Thor to be down there. Not a bad movie, not even just a meh movie, it's a good movie that just doesn't have that much rewatchability. And, I mean, while we're at it, let's just finish off the Thor trilogy, and let me continue my controversial takes. Thor Ragnarok is a C easily. I'm not the biggest fan of this, but I do love Taika Waititi, and I'm actually more excited for Thor Love and Thunder than I ever was for Thor Ragnarok. And I say that for my biggest reason being Taika is actually writing the script for this one. So now I feel like it's going to be a more cohesive storyline and plotting and all that same things, while at the same time being a bunch of fun. Thor Ragnarok is an entertaining comedy that you can watch, laugh, smile, and get some awesome badass moments into it. Hela is a pretty cool villain that I wanted a little bit more of. Kate Blanchett, though, steals that entire show. Thor is great. He goes more with the humor. Mark Ruffalo's Hulk, I love the Hulk aspects, and Tessa Thompson as Valkyrie, for me, actually stole the entire show. Jeff Goldblum's good. I mean, the entire cast is amazing in Ragnarok. But the humor very much puts a big detriment to all of the dramatic avenues, and that is the one reason that Thor Ragnarok for me lands at a C. On rewatches, again, I laugh, I have fun, but every time it comes down to those dramatic avenues, it's never one that I want to go back and rewatch. It's a good movie to put on in the background and enjoy here and there, but it's one that I definitely needed more of. And that's why it's at a C, so I'm going to stop talking. Next, we have Captain Marvel, which, let's also put it in the C. I thought this was a cool introductory to a character that I think needed a better introductory overall, because I love Brie Larson as Captain Marvel. I think she is absolutely top 10 actresses working right now. But the problem with this movie is that you just truly don't come to care about Captain Marvel herself. Yes, they did a really good job bringing her to life, but having her not really know who she is for a majority of the movie makes it hard for the audience to really much latch onto her character. And this comes kind of down to be the same thing with Falcon and Winter Soldier. While I appreciate the movie, I think it could have been way better. Some of the action's great, some of the space stuff's great, and then some of the other elements are just piss poor. I have more faith with Nia DaCosta coming on board to do the Marvels, with of course Monica Rambeau, Miss Marvel, Captain Marvel all coming together, and rumored to be Samuel L. Jackson also showing up there, who was one of the best parts of Captain Marvel. I like seeing some of the introductory to this entire world. The cat is still, again, I like Goose, but the way that Nick Fury loses his eye is still like the stupidest thing in the entire world. Bar none, though, Captain Marvel's enjoyable for what it is. It's just not one I care to ever rewatch. Moving in next, we have Captain America, the Winter Soldier, which is easily going to be an S. This is one of my favorite movies in the entire MCU yet. And I love this movie for what it is on a personal level, on a structural level, and probably arguably one of the best made anime Marvel movies made yet. And I find that because the Russo brothers, everyone, when they were announced, everyone's like, really? That's who you're handling the next Captain America movie to? And it worked in wonders. I love Winter Soldier. I love the relationship between Bucky and the whole Winter Soldier aspect. The fight scenes were honestly, before Shang-Chi, probably still the best hand-to-hand combat stuff. I love the way that they intersected Black Widow, brought Falcon in, and even Alexandra Pierce, who is a really menacing villain behind the scenes. Winter Soldier is one of those movies that takes it back to the political thriller element days, and I adore that, and I need more of that. Moving in next, let's jump into what should we do next? Let's go back to let's do Iron Man 3. Iron Man 3, I'm gonna put in the B category. This is one that kind of flips between my A and my B depending on my mood, and today I'm feeling like a B for this one. Now, I actually find this movie to be an energetic ride, and it totally is a Shane Black movie in and out. They literally said, Shane Black, do whichever you want, and I think it's been a while since we've actually gotten a straightforward, ambitious thing like this, and for a majority of the movie, it's not Iron Man. He is Tony Stark, and I actually like that he had to rely on his wit and charm, and in general, his smarts to actually outhand the bad guys in here. You know, we definitely could have been, we already got screwed over on the Mandarin. We deserved a lot more better with that, and honestly, to God, that would have been perfect casting to have him, but nope, he ended up being Trevor Slattery, who's not the best character in the world, but it was a cool twist at that. It just kind of felt like a slap in the face some of us who were like wanting the Mandarin so bad. Iron Man 3 is not a bad movie. I enjoy this one immensely for what it is, and I find it to be a lot of fun, especially within its writing, but again, I understand why that twist does piss off a lot of people. Moving in next, let's go with The Incredible Hulk, which I actually think is B, C. I'm going to go with C because of rewatchability. This is another one that I just don't care to rewatch all that often. I think the fight scene between Abomination and Hulk is awesome. I actually like the darker, cynical tone of this movie, and Edward Norton as Mark Ruffalo was fantastic, and I wish in some alternate universe that we could actually see that continue. Even though I do love Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner, this was a really great introduction back into The Incredible Hulk. In general, though, it's just a movie that I don't feel myself going back and rewatching too often because I just don't think it's a great movie. I think it's a good movie, but one that needed a lot more overhaul in the tone, and I'm excited to see what they do with She-Hulk, and I know there's rumors that there may be a World War Hulk film, which will be pretty cool if we get that. And, of course, moving in next, let's go to another Disney Plus series. Let's do Loki, which I think Loki is an S. Out of all the new stuff that Marvel has done this year, Loki has absolutely stormed right up to the gates and became one of my favorite things that they have ever done yet. And I was wrong, because when they announced this show, I said that is the dumbest thing. I don't want to see Loki doing that. Loki died. I don't want to see it. And then I see this, and then they're introducing the TVA, which, okay, that's cool. And then you get to the end of it, and Kang's there, a variant of Kang, and I just got more excited. Sylvia was a great introduction. Mobius is a great character. Loki just ended up being one of my favorite things of this entire year, and it honestly strikes me to the point where I said, okay, if Marvel continues this path, this might be the best year that they've done yet, at least for my full opinion. I love Loki. I love what they were able to do with it, and I find it to be one of the strongest elements of the entire show yet, or in general, what they've been doing on Disney+. Moving in next, let's do Black Panther, and I find Black Panther to go into the A category. This is one of the top tier, one of the best Marvel films ever, and it was a game changer when it came out, just as Shang-Chi was a game changer this year. I love T'Challa. I love the entire world of Black Panther, Wakanda, the mythology, everything that they build up in there was some of the most unique elements that I've ever found myself diving into when it comes down to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The one thing, though, about this movie is it is a really, really deep film when it goes down into its morale, its themes, its messages, and everything of that nature. It's a movie that I love to revisit, and I love the soundtrack and score as well. The entire cast is great, and Killmonger is easily one of the best Marvel villains yet. Absolutely love Black Panther. I can't get enough of this movie, and I'm sure if you love it as well, you'll be telling me down below in the comment section. But let's move on to the next one, and let's go with the Avengers, which I'm going to put the First Avengers in the B category. Now, if we hadn't had this entire Marvel Cinematic Universe yet, and it just ended after the Avengers, or some weird thing had happened, this is a classic movie that I think if we look back 10, 15 years from now, this will be looked at as a classic of what really this Marvel Cinematic Universe films could do. Now, on par looking back, I like this film a lot. It's just one that I feel like in the middle of the entire movie, it slows deathly slowly down, and it picks back up immensely during the third act. And the third act's fantastic. The battle for New York, I love that. Again, so many iconic moments to it. The score, all that stuff. The movies show that the MCU can work, and it just was pretty much a prototype for what was to come down the road. It's exciting. I enjoy it. But it's not one that I go back to revisit too often, because if I want to revisit one, it's Infinity War that I want to revisit, and that's why I'm going to put Infinity War in the A category. I love Infinity War. I love what they were able to do with this universe. I love how they were able to develop it in such a grand way, to have all these different worlds, all these different teams of characters, really much. And the smart aspect of this, of what the Russo brothers did, was actually team up everyone in a unique way of like, okay, we'll have Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, Iron Man. Okay, we're going to have Captain America, Black Panther. And having these teams kind of go with one another, it made for great banter, great chemistry, but also great action scenes. And I can't tell you what I loved more, but I also love how it makes the film feel breezy. It breezes by its runtime as it's going about each and every act, and I sit there just in awe of the action scenes. This truly is a war. From the first act, and the second it ends, it kicks right off into the fight scenes, and it just never stops. I know that is an issue for some people, because this really much is just pure entertainment, but it's a movie that furtherly I enjoy immensely. I love diving into this one, seeing all the different action scenes, and Doctor Strange versus Thanos is still one of the coolest things. That whole thing on Titan is just mesmerizing. Every fight scene in there. I love this film, and nothing will ever beat the joy of Thor arriving in Wakanda with Rocket and Groot. That is like, if you didn't get to see that moment in theaters, you were missing out, because that was an amazing moment. But talking about Rocket and Groot, let's talk about Guardians of the Galaxy, which is still my favorite MCU film to date. This is easily an S for me. There's a lot to it. I grew up reading Star-Lord, Rocket, Groot when they were first introduced. I never really read the Yondu stuff. I knew who they were, but there was something about this group of Guardians that I was like, when they announced it, I'm like, oh my god, they're doing it. And everyone around me was like, that's the dumbest thing. I don't know why they're doing it. It's not going to work. And then it came out of nowhere and surprised everyone. And I loved what they were able to do with Guardians of the Galaxy, and I wanted more from this world so much. And we got more, and we're getting more. And, you know, even though Volume 3 might be the end for some of these characters, I'm excited for it because I think this is still the best MCU film. Rewatchability, music, soundtrack, characters. James Gunn nailed it as being a James Gunn movie, but also furthering the cosmic universe of the MCU. It's weird, it's wacky, but it's highly enjoyable, and it's one of my favorite films I've ever seen, and also one of my favorite comic book movies of all time. They just did it right. Diving in next, let's jump into SpiderMan Homecoming, which I find to be an A. I enjoy SpiderMan Homecoming a lot. Now, I think there are some weird, cliche, and even cringy moments in this entire movie, and Far From Home definitely has those as well, but they never deter from my enjoyment of this film. Vulture is one of my least favorite Spider-Man villains of all time, and I remember when they announced him in here, I was like, that's dumb, I don't want that, and then they put him in there, and I'm like, okay, this actually worked really well, and Michael Keaton killed this role as Vulture. I love the design, the element, the fight scene between Spider-Man, but in general, this is more of a coming-of-age story, feeling very much in the vein of John Hughes. You get that from Ferris Bueller's Day Off vibe, Breakfast Club, all those sorts of avenues work, and I don't think we've ever really gotten a film about Peter in high school, and this movie we actually did, and I love how it was trying to balance these elements of being bullied in high school, be like, yeah, I could show everyone I'm Spider-Man. It's elements like that that really much work, and Giacchino's score is great. The dynamics between him and Iron Man, I know a lot of people don't love, but I actually really appreciate it. Again, we've gotten, 5 other Spider-Man movies beforehand that were completely standalone. This was the first one coming together, and I actually really like that. While I'm hoping that in the near future, Tom Holland gets a singular Spider-Man story where it's just him relying on himself, and I have some theories for No Way Home that actually prove that might happen, but in general, I really adore Homecoming, and it's one of my favorite Spider-Man adventures we've ever gone on. And let's rile up the Spider-Man. Let's continue this and continue the fan base. Spider-Man No Way Home. Spider-Man Far From Home is an S for me now. There's a lot of nostalgic for why I would put it in an S. Again, it still has some of the cringy, cliche moments that I don't love, but it's a movie that I immensely love rewatching. And one of the biggest things is, you see over here, Mysterio is one of my favorite villains of all time. Spider-Man comics, Marvel comics, comic books in general, I never thought you could do him on the big screen, and they did it so well. I love Jake Gyllenhaal also being casted in this. It looks like he's just having so much fun. And again, this is a movie that they just pulled Mysterio off right. I love the twist, the turns, even though I knew he was going to be bad. I love how Spider-Man actually, in the finale, actually has to kind of adjust and know it's all on him. Yeah, Nick Fury's there, but still, it's up to Tom Holland's Peter Parker to figure this out when he's structuring, making a little bit of shield and figuring out, how can I do this? That is the Spider-Man I love, and I feel like they got everything right in this movie. I know not everyone agrees with that, but as an epilogue to Endgame, it proved to me that yes, I want more in the MCU, and God, that end credit scene still blows my mind every single time I see it. But let's move into the next one. We're finaling up. And I want to say once again, guys, thank you so much for watching this. If you guys haven't yet, comment down below your ranking on the MCU, as well as make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. And a big thank you to our sponsor, the Scottsdale International Film Festival. If you're in the Arizona area, definitely get your tickets now, because there's going to be a lot of cool indie films showing up there, and you won't want to miss out. But without further ado, let's get back to Ant-Man and the Wasp, which I'm going to put in the B category. I don't mind this one. Actually, no, I'm thinking about it. Let's put it in the C category. This is one that, again, immensely enjoyable, very much fun. I love the added heist elements in here. I find the villain, though, for this to be probably the weakest thing. Not Ghost, but Walter Goggins' character in general. I actually liked Ghost, and I want to see more of her in the MCU because I really like the actress. But when it comes down to this movie, the thing that really stands out for me, and anytime I rethink about it, is Wasp as a protagonist. I can't wait to see what they do with the next Ant-Man and the Wasp movie, because I actually think as a movie, that movie is going to go bigger and bolder than we've ever seen before. As it comes down to Ant-Man and the Wasp, why I think it's a greatly made movie, and I would still stand by my B+ rating. On rewatchability, it's one that I don't go back to too often, and in between Endgame and whatnot, it felt like a weird placement of the film. I actually feel like this movie should have came out before Infinity War and then had the end credit scene in Infinity War be them in the van and then them disappearing. I thought that actually would have worked really well. Other than that, though, I enjoyed Ant-Man and the Wasp for what it was, and I found it to be a blast of time. Give me more Angeline Lilly as the Wasp, please. Moving in next, let's go Black Widow. Now, I know not a lot of people love this movie. I really immensely loved it. The third act maybe is the only thing that deters this movie from being an S, but I found this to be one of the best things, and that's why I'm going to kick it in the A category, which I already did. Black Widow kicks it off for me. It's a story we have been waiting for so many times, so long, but I've seen this movie at least 4 or 5 times since it's debuted in theaters, and I fall in love with it each time. It's a great passing the baton to Florence Pugh's character, which is a big standout. Adding in as well as Melina, played by Rachel Weisz, and of course David Harbour's Red Guardian, who are both phenomenal pieces of character. The only thing that honestly I was disappointed with this movie was Taskmaster. While I don't love the big MCU-ish big blowing up on all this sorts of stuff in the space station or whatever the hell they call it, the Red Room in the third act, I still enjoy everything about it. The quieter moments, the introductory, the first 2 acts are some of the best 2 acts that we've had in a Marvel film yet. I love the action scenes, and again, Florence Pugh is a big standout. I love this movie. It's one of my favorite MCU films yet, and I wasn't expecting that because I really wasn't that excited about this one. Next, we have Civil War, which I'm also going to put in the A category. A lot of people love this movie. A lot of people probably put it even in the S category. I'm going to put it in an A for now, and I leave it there because I do feel like that the stakes never hit the heights of that third act battle, which is great. The whole thing in the airport, while fun, it never felt like they were actually trying to kill each other or fight each other, where in the comics, it really felt like it was an end to the death. Like, this is it. I'm going to kill you, we're going to fight, and that's going to be it. There was never really that much stakes towards the end of it. Yes, Rhodey was paralyzed from the waist down, but then they fixed that and gave him the like little armor suit or whatever. But I wanted more from this. I wanted a death. I wanted some big, meaningful stakes in here. And while, yes, it leads into Infinity War, but the team is now broken, I expected a little bit more from that on that side. But Civil War, goddamn, has some of the coolest action scenes. I love the last fight scene between Iron Man, Cap, and Bucky. It's an emotional journey and truly much Team Cap, Team Iron Man. Let me know down below. The introductory to Black Panther and Spider-Man here were perfect. And again, this is a very entertaining blockbuster that I like the dramatic avenues that it went to in the darker elements. I just wish it stuck that landing in some of the stakes and elements for that all. But that's where we're going to go to the next one. Let's do Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, which I'm going to put in a B. Now, I put this in a B. I have not watched this film in quite a while. This is actually one I need to go back, and I keep telling myself I need to rewatch before I do my next ranking. I haven't done it yet, but I do planning on doing a whole entire rewatch on all these before Spider-Man No Way Home comes out, because I want to see if this one actually moves up. This is a film that I love the themes and messages between son and father and how that really much works, but it's a movie that for me is the more I rewatch and go back on it, I find myself not completely loving it or even looking back on it. I love the music. I love, again, those themes and messages, but there's just something about this movie that feels a little bit more harsher than the first one. I don't know. It's just, this one feels like a B for me. That's all it is. Jumping in, WandaVision is going to be an A. Now, if it wasn't for the finale of this, I probably would put this in the S category, but I didn't love the finale. But the rest of the show, I adored and found it to be one of the most unique and interesting properties that the MCU has done yet. And I found WandaVision to be a unique aspect. It gave me more love for Scarlet Witch herself. I love Wanda Maximoff. It gave me an introductory to her kids, which I hope to see more of in the future. Vision, if this is the final version, which, again, we're getting the White Vision later down the road, but Paul Bettany was great in here. Quicksilver, that's really one of the big other reasons that I didn't think this worked as well. I wanted some multiverse stuff in here. Maybe that was just some expectations, but the Ralph Boner joke still does not work for me. But Monica Rambeau was also a big star in here. And then, of course, Agatha. Great casting from Catherine Hahn. I adore WandaVision for what it is, but I wanted a little bit more from it overall. Jumping in, let's go to the first one, Iron Man. This is also going to be an A. I love the first Iron Man so much. I find it just to be such a great origin story to the entire telling of the MCU. This is what kicked it off, and it's still very entertaining today. Yes, some elements are a little bit dated, and it's especially the MySpace joke and certain things like that, but it shows its colors in there because this is a movie that was made in what, like 2008? It kicked off the entire MCU, and I remember walking out of that theater, not seeing the end credit scene, and then telling my grandmother, hey, we gotta go back because there was apparently something after the credits, going back and my mind being blown what was truly there. Big exciting elements there. And kicking off with Iron Man, let's go to Iron Man 2, which is in the D category as well. I don't hate this movie. I just don't care to rewatch it. The villains are bland, except Justin Hammer. I loved Sam Rockwell in this movie, and I want more of Sam Rockwell right now. The thing for me, though, is that this movie just does, it feels like the bridge. Like, okay, we got to add a lot of things to really much give that introductory to the Avengers. We've already introduced Iron Man, so let's just kind of do this segue thing. And the plotting gets a little bit mixed in there. Not as bad as Avengers Age of Ultron, per se, because Avengers Age of Ultron actually did it a pretty good job. Iron Man 2 is the one that kind of was the deter of it, and I feel like if they would have gotten a little bit more time with the script, it really would have helped. They were really much trying to flesh out a lot in this movie. It's not a bad movie in my opinion, it's just a fine one that I don't care to rewatch. Now we got 3 more movies left. Avengers Endgame is easily going to be in the S category as well. I adore this movie. What else more is there to say? I don't think it's perfect. I think it is a little bit slow in its pacing, but that's a good thing. I like that the way they structured the first, second, and third act. And if Infinity War is the Two Towers, this is the return of the king of the MCU. I don't know how they'll ever hit the hype level that the Endgame had hit in here, but maybe one day they will. I love seeing all these characters come to life. The stakes felt meaningful in here. Everything felt emotional and building to that point. And the final third act, it's one of the best things I've ever seen in a comic book movie, and the audience just was screaming at that entire point in time. Now we have the last 2 things to kind of talk about. We have What If and the Eternals. Now, What If I'm going to put in the B category. I found a lot of What If episodes, at least 3 in particular, to be amazing, especially the Doctor Strange one. That would be in the S tier for how amazing that episode was. But for every amazing episode and every great episode, there were some weaker episodes as well that on rewatch didn't totally work for me and did drown out the season, to really much just keep it in the B category. I'm really curious to see how this comes out to be canon later down the road. I'm assuming we'll see Peggy Carter's Captain Carter. I'm assuming we'll see maybe the Supreme Strange and Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. There are so many possible infinite ideas and endless ideas that they could possibly do, but I do want more of Jeffrey Wright as the Watcher, and I assume there's some things in the future that I feel like he's going to be coming about into very soon, and I can't wait to see where that possibly pops up. What If is there for me, an interesting concept that I'm curious to see how Season 2 does. But the last and final thing that we have to rank on this tier list is The Eternals, the latest MCU film out in theaters right now. I'll have a spoiler review up tomorrow because there's a lot to talk about, and I don't want to get into spoilers on here, so you are safe if you haven't seen the film yet. I love this movie. I'm going to put it in the A category. I know a lot of critics are missed. It seems like people love it, hate it, or are very disappointed by it. For me, I loved it. I love how ambitious it was, and I'd rather get a very ambitious and unique property than something that we've seen before. Eternals for me is an A. It's not an S. It's not the best MCU film yet, or even the best made MCU film yet, like I thought it was going to be. But I thought what Chloe Zhao put into here and her heart and everything of that nature was amazing. And I think for here, the way that it made me actually care about every single character, I didn't expect that. I expected, oh, I like this one, this one, this one. I love them all. I love the action scenes. I loved how visceral it was. The deviants could have been better, but for the stakes and in general what they actually have now introduced into the MCU, again, not getting into spoilers, there's a lot and heavy stuff in here that kind of blew my mind, and I can't wait to see what they do. It's ambitious, it's dense, it's deep, and it's unlike anything the MCU has done before, and I please keep trying unique and different things. But I can't express enough how I want to see more of the Eternals characters. I think these characters are really unique and interesting. And again, if you didn't like this movie, I can understand. It is unlike anything that the MCU has done yet. But guys, that's going to be my MCU ranking in a tier list form. Let me know down below what your guys' thoughts are. What is your MCU ranking? Again, this is my opinion, and if you disagree, that's fine. Hit that like and subscribe button. Head on over to Samtron Films on how to see films early. Do not forget, if you're in the Arizona area, to go to the Scottsdale International Film Festival website to get your tickets now. And of course, a big name to you and a big name to my Patreon supporters, because without you, I wouldn't be able to do this. So of course, until next time, stay classy.